Welcome to the Emotional Eating Unwrapped podcast. I'm your host, Alana Kessler, an emotional eating and weight loss coach for women looking to fall in love with eating, create healthy attachments with food, and lose weight sustainably. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Emotional Eating Unwrapped. I am so happy to be here today, and I am even happier to talk about this week's topic, which is a bit of a hot take. And I'm excited to finally share it because I think I've been keeping it under wraps for a while, but I think it's time for it to fly. So today we're going to be talking about why tracking macros is, in fact, a trauma response. Yes, that's right. We are diving deep into why obsessing over carbs, fats, and proteins, which are macronutrients, which is the scientific term for macros, is not the key to losing weight or sustainably maintaining weight loss, and in fact is a projection of trauma and a deeply ingrained control coping mechanism, masquerading as a vehicle towards body confidence and food freedom. Okay, so this is what I'm going to share today. This is what I've been keeping close to my chest for a while about macro counting and about macro counting as it relates to weight loss and behavior modification change around dysfunctional behaviors with eating, like compulsive eating, binging, mindless eating. Okay? That is the context in which I'm saying that choosing to use macro counting or any program, reverse diet that uses counting as a vehicle for transformation and results is, in fact, a trauma response. So, what is the appeal to track macros or follow these types of plans, external diet plans, like I like to call them? And I can speak to this actually, really. This isn't like an opinion that I just took out of the air. This is something that I've done when I was actively in a very dysfunctional cycle with compulsive eating and restriction and other behaviors with food. And I went back to macro counting the first thing 4 or 5 times probably in the 15 years that I struggled with weight gain and emotional eating, like I said. And each time I would be hoping that this time it would work. Okay. I'd be hoping that this time it would work like it did the first time. Because here's the thing about macro counting. The only time that it even remotely works is the first time. And if you're listening to this and you've done macro counting, I think you might resonate with that. You might be saying, you can't say macro counting doesn't work because it worked for me. I lost so-and-so amount of weight with macro counting. But how many years ago was that? And how many times have you tried doing it again? And how many times has it worked again? Because here's the thing, the first time that you try macro counting, I'm gonna like back this hard. The first time that you try macro counting is the best physical result that you will ever get from it. Okay, the best one. Mainly because it just shocks your body in a new way. Okay, so that's why. It's not to do with the method itself. And what you actually end up with is more confusion, more obsession, and more weight. What you actually, because what macro counting actually is, it's a hyper focus on numbers and calculations and all these things. Because here's the truth, macro counting is attractive to those of us who like control and like to hyper focus on something that feels certain and quantifiable. It's A to B. If I do this, I will get this. And on some level, we feel like we can bypass the anxiety of the unknown this way. We can bypass the messiness of having to feel if we went too far and have to figure out what kind of adjustment we have to make. We have to sit with that feeling of like bloatedness and just blah for a little while, right? And we don't have to experience any of this with macro counting because the plan will just tell us when to increase food and when to decrease food. All this dynamic macro counting process, right? We can just follow the leader here. But this is exactly why macro counting is a trauma response. It's a trauma response to a lack of self-trust. Period. Stop. I don't care what results happen in the mirror. Okay. I don't care. Like if you lose the weight or whatever it is, right? It doesn't, because again, to me, it's not, in the episode that we released a week or two ago, I don't think weight loss is like a through line to confidence. You have to have the underlying emotional landscape, the underlying emotional architecture of real self-trust that comes through uncertainty and not following a leader. And the thing is the longer this is the method through which you are trying to find self-confidence, the farther away it becomes. Because what this is actually doing is it is reinforcing to your subconscious that you are, in fact, not the leader. When you follow a macro counting plan and you follow its, dynamic, I'm trying to find the right word, but it's dynamic increases and decreases, you're actually telling your subconscious, like, I'm not the leader. The macro target is the leader. You're saying that you can't be trusted. This is the message that you're saying, that you cannot be trusted. Just you can't be trusted. Your feeling body can't be trusted. And eventually what happens is your conscious self rebels. Okay, so you follow this plan, your subconscious is hearing all this time, I'm not the leader, I'm not the leader. And eventually, usually after like 4 months or so, your conscious self catches up and it rebels. But the problem is that a rebel is not a good leader either, right? So if you just stop macro counting, you're just like, or, you just kind of stop doing it, or, the part of you that rebels and kind of gives up is not a good leader either. There's no core, right? There's no strong core. There's no strong infrastructure. It's simply just reactionary. And being reactionary is also a trauma response. Okay, so the thing is that so let me just throw out some numbers here. 85% of women who subscribe to a macro counting or reverse diet plan ends up gaining the weight back within 3 years. This is a fact. And 40% of those women end up gaining even more weight than when they started. Okay. Now, again, I want to express a disclaimer here about macro counting, that if you are following a macro counting plan because you're a bodybuilder, you're for body composition, you're an athlete, macro counting for you is really just almost like data, because your body is a vehicle for some activity or performance, right? You need your body in a certain place for performance. So you're following macros for performance. That is not what we're talking about here, okay? I'm talking about the regular person, the regular woman who wants to lose weight, who feels like she can't handle her cravings, she binges at night. I'm describing myself, right? Yo-yo diets and fluctuates weight. I'm talking about her. Okay, I'm not talking about the performance human. Okay, so I just want to put that disclaimer in there here. So Now that we know all this, what do we do instead? Okay, what do we do instead if we don't macro count? Because it can seem like very blurry, like macro counting is so cut and dry, right? It's like, and that's what we like about it. But what do we do instead? But the thing is, when it comes to weight loss and changing behaviors with food, the thing is that it's really not about the food. It's about our emotional attachments with food. And when we track macros and hyper focus on numbers like that, it's actually a distraction to building the heightened, attuned emotional maturity around creating healthy attachments with food, right? It also ends up being a misguided attempt to manipulate our nervous system and cope with emotional challenges. Okay, so, tracking macros is a distraction to maturing in our emotional relationship with eating. And it actually ends up manipulating our nervous system, and it does not help us cope better with emotional challenges. And, here's the thing. Here's the thing when it comes to macro counting. Tracking macros or any kind of external meal plan, any kind of cleanse, reverse diet, whatever, it's actually the gateway to a dysregulated nervous system. Okay, I'm just going to say it. It is. Hypervigilance on something is a gateway to a dysregulated nervous system. Hypervigilance is a trauma response. So when you hyper focus on something day in, day out, I don't care if you say to yourself, I'll stop doing it when I hit a goal. We are what we do. So if you're doing that for months on end, hyper focusing, you're not going to walk away with a regulated nervous system. You're going to walk away with a hyper focused nervous system. You're not going to walk away with a nervous system that can handle uncertainty, different emotions, all these things where you don't turn to food as a coping mechanism again because you didn't practice that. You hyper focused on numbers. Okay, so I like to say, and I'm saying that tracking macros and any kind of external diet or meal plan is actually the gateway to a dysregulated nervous system. I'm actually using gateway the same way that you'd use gateway, a gateway substance. Like any good gateway substance or experience, it gives you everything you think you need to feel amazing and in control at first, which you do with macro counting or other gateway substances. But then slowly, it starts to wreak havoc on you, right? On your self-trust, on your joy, on your confidence, and on your ability to take life as it comes. That is actually a skill, and enjoy the ride. So I want to talk about another way. I want to talk about the way that I lost 40 pounds without counting, without hyper-focusing on macros, without logging, pre-logging, creating a macro-friendly plate, whatever it is. I want to talk about that because at the end of the day, you want to get to a place where weight loss isn't something that you are continuing to work on and maintain, right? Feeling like we have to work on something all the time. Also, we don't want to have to feel like we have to go back to this mental gymnastics and calculations to maintain it. Okay, you want to get to the place where the work of weight loss is not your identity anymore. You are actually now, in fact, this person who is at this weight and whose life is much bigger than focusing on this now. And we don't get there by engaging our brains even more than we already do, by focusing on the numbers on the nutrition label or grams of a certain macro. Right? We don't get there by doing that. We get there by reconnecting to our feeling body, getting out of our brain and into our feeling body. Understanding why we eat the way we do and training our nervous system to deal with the sensations relating to eating, like hunger and fullness and bloating and all these different things. And by doing that, we build the muscle of self-trust. So while tracking macros might seem like the holy grail for weight management, it's actually about instant gratification and avoidance of discomfort. And it is actually an expression of responding to that trauma of lack of self-trust. Because true change is a longer game, right? It's a long game. And it comes from reconnecting to our feeling body, developing emotional attunement and maturity, and rewiring the root cause of our eating habits, understanding our emotional triggers, and evolving our identities and mindset. It's not about restriction or external control. It's about fostering a mindful and joyful and almost like it's not something I think about all the time, relationship with food. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me today to talk about this. And don't forget to join me next week again with another new episode about emotional eating, so you can fall in love with eating, start losing weight, and keep it off with sustainable strategies and lasting change. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, leave a review on Apple, and share it with those who may benefit from this empowering knowledge. I also have a lot of free resources on my website to help you on your journey to loving food and losing weight. Just go to www.bewellbyak.com. And until next time, I'm Alana, and thank you for listening to Emotional Eating